This is the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast, your source for the strategies, systems, and insights you need to turn your dreams into your destiny. Every week, we dive into dynamic conversations as our host, Nicole Greer, interviews leadership and business experts. They're here to shed light on practical solutions to the challenges of personal and professional development. Now, here's your host, a professional speaker, coach, and consultant, Nicole Greer.
Welcome, everybody, to the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. My name is Nicole Greer, and I am here to help you build a vibrant culture. And today I have an amazing guest again. This guest today is Jason Smith. I met Jason Smith at the SHRM, the Rock Hill SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, and we became fast friends. Jason Smith is the Principal Compensation Consultant. That's the PCC for all of you, with Gallagher's Compensation and Rewards Consulting Practice. He is based in Columbia, South Carolina, where he is responsible for attaining and leading general workforce and sales compensation client engagements. Jason has been a compensation practitioner in the industry since 2006 and joined Gallagher in late 2023 to put all his experience to work for Gallagher's clients. His past employers include Gannett USA Today, First Citizens Bank, Denny's. Don't you love a grand slam? Everybody say yes. Put it in the comments. Love a grand slam. Palmetto Health, now Prism Health. Jason also served as the president of the Chain Restaurants Total Rewards Association. That's the CRTRA. And at-large board member for the South Carolina Healthcare Human Resources Association. Jason received a BS in Business Administration from the University of South Carolina, and he holds 4 certifications from World at Work. He is a CCP, a CSCP, a GRP, and a CBP. Whew, that's a lot of C's and B's and P's. And he is also a faculty member for them. Please welcome to the show, Jason Smith. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So poor Jason, he's at the SHRM meeting, and I mentioned the Applebees, and he's like, oh my God, I was the Applebees. So we're like brothers from another mother. We got this Applebees history. If you've been listening to the podcast, I used to work at the Applebees, and so did Jason. But Jason, tell us, how did you get into HR? Usually people kind of fall into it. How'd you get into this biz?
Well, it was really because of Applebee's. You know, most of my dearest friends to this day are people that I worked with at Applebee's 20 years ago. And Applebee's was a much different animal 20 years ago than it
Yeah,
is
it was.
today. But yeah, it was partly because I was bartending one day. Actually, so I'll go back a little bit further. I didn't tell you this part. My first actual job out of college was working at the unemployment office in Sumter, South Carolina.
Oh my gosh, what a great first job. You can't make that up.
Yeah.
That's
No,
fantastic.
you can't. And I mean, I had a marketing degree, but all the jobs for marketing majors were sales jobs, and I didn't want to do that. So yeah, so I went to work there. It was on a temporary grant with the state, and that temporary grant did not get renewed because of budget cuts and stuff like that.
See, nothing has changed, y'all. People are like, oh, things are bad. And it's like, well, it's always been like this.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
So effectively, I got laid off from the unemployment office, and that's been a fun story for me.
That's hilarious.
I walked out the back door on my last day and came around, walked in the front door and applied for unemployment. But actually, I did not apply for unemployment. So I managed to go back to bartending at Applebee's for a little while. And I was in there one day, and these 2 ladies came in for some happy hour drinks. And I was actually picking up a shift for somebody. I wasn't supposed to be there. But these 2 ladies came in, and I remembered them from maybe 6 months before and remembered their drinks. And so they were really impressed with that, I guess, and had their drinks.
Customer service, people. Customer service.
Yeah, one was a Gold Rocks margarita, and the other one was a Glenlivet on the rocks. Anyway, so I talked to them, gave them my story about getting laid off from the unemployment office, and I was washing glasses at the other end of the bar, and I noticed them talking and snickering, kind of whispering to each other, and I went over and asked them what they were talking about, and they just came out and said, would you like to apply for a benefits counselor job at Palmetto Health? Sure. I didn't even ask what it paid. I just needed a job. And it definitely wasn't my wheelhouse, but they saw how I handled them. And it was a big customer service job for the employees to help employees with their benefits and everything. So yeah, 2 weeks later, I had the job, and it worked out from there. And then 3 years after that is when the compensation manager came to me and said, hey, I was wondering if you'd like to apply to become part of my team. And I said, well, that's great and all, but what do you do? I don't know what compensation.
Comp and what?
Right. So yes, that was 2006, and ever since then, I got really into compensation and really enjoyed it and enjoyed being good at it. Yeah, so that's how I ended up here 20 years later almost.
That's so
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, it's so crazy that we have this in common because I was at the Applebee's, I was running around, I was doing front of house, and woman said to me, "Come here a minute, let me give you my business card." And I was so young and not with it yet.
Mhm.
And she's like, "Just call me." I'm like, "What do you want me to call you about?" I didn't understand. And she's like, "Just call me." I'm like, "Okay." And so I called her with one of those phones that was actually attached to the wall with a cord, and same thing. She's like, "I think you should try property management." So, I don't know. It's a thing, but you gotta start somewhere. And when I was at Applebee's, this is probably your case too, they asked me to train people. They asked me to be part of the training process, which is HR, don't you think?
It is.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If you want to get into HR, maybe get into food service, maybe get into retail and work your way into the crevices and the cracks like we did. All
Right.
right. Yeah. So compensation. We're going to talk about compensation today. And everybody's like, show me the money. Right. So we've got employees on one hand that want more money, more money, more money. And we've got employers on the other hand, like, I don't know if I can pay this. So there's a lot to take into consideration here. And I know most of us as leaders and HR professionals, we want to know how to do it right. So let's tap into the serious brain of Jason right now. All right. So my first question for you, Jason, is how should leaders, right? So just a leader who's got a team, who's trying to pay
Yeah.
them the right amount of money, how do they think about balancing internal equity with market competitiveness? So first of all, internal equity means how do we keep it right on the inside of the company? And then how do we compete with what people are paying out there? Okay.
Yeah.
So mark, set, go.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's the age old question, and it's hard to focus on both things. But if you focus on one, it kind of lends to the other one. But this is definitely what all HR leaders and leaders should be thinking about constantly is how to maintain that balance between internal equity and external competitiveness because it's important. So for HR leaders, especially ones in smaller organizations that wear all the hats,
Mm,
they do comp, they do benefits, they do performance management, they do learning and development, they do employee relations. A lot of them are heavy on employee relations. And while they may be an expert at employee relations, they may not be an expert at the other pieces, the other hats.
right.
But they should really be developing programs and practices that kind of give their frontline managers the tools and the guidance that they need to be able to make good, informed pay decisions for both new hires and internal promotions, all of those. So it's really important. But getting to that point involves a lot of work. You have to make sure that you know the data. You have to have the
Right.
market data. So to have the market data, you got to buy the market data. Now we're going to get into that with a couple of things later on too. Just know that like scouring the web for pay ranges on other job postings and going to the free salary.com. So I want to clarify salary.com, the free site is one of those things where you get what you pay for, right? It's free.
Right.
You just punch in your job title, you punch in your pay, it's employee reported data. But there's a lot of HR managers out there that again are wearing all the hats
So
and
what we got to do
they're
is quick,
yeah,
right?
right. They got to go out and do what's quick and what's free. So yeah, it's a mishmash of all that, but then you get the data. What do you do with it? Right. Then you got to figure out what the 25th and 50th and 75th percentile is and what
Mm,
everybody's comp ratio is. So it's a lot of work, especially if you're not an expert in compensation, which is why people like me exist to help them navigate that.
that's right. And teach us. Be our little
Yeah.
trainer. Mhm.
Yeah. But it's all about maintaining a balance. You focus on one too much, you're going to miss the other. It's a tough balance, but that's what I help a lot of my clients with now.
Yeah, and I think on the internal equity side, you've got your data, right? You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, you have your data. You should have a handle on your data, which means you should know the ranges in a certain job title, things like that, what's going on, why you're doing what you're doing. There may be some like no good reason why you're doing what you're doing. So recognizing that there's a lot you can do, but definitely you can get your internal, and he's going to share later about the market competitiveness. Okay. So we got to make sure we know what's going on, get our data in place. All right. So what's the
yeah.
difference between pay equity and pay equality, and why does it matter? One of the big things out there, Jason, is this whole talk about pay transparency and all this kind of stuff. So what's the difference between pay equity and pay equality? Teach us.
Well, it's a really nominal difference between the two of them.
Okay.
And pay equity really focuses on eliminating wage disparities that arise from discrimination. And that's something that we do as well. We go in and we help companies identify those issues. We make recommendations on what they're supposed to do to fix those issues. Normally, you have internal counsel from the client engaged in this just to make sure, because there's a lot of emails back and forth about specific individuals and their pay relative to others. But yeah, pay equity focuses on it's really the act of eliminating wage discrepancies. But then pay equality is all about ensuring that there is no discrimination going on. So one is fixing a problem, and the other, pay equality, is not creating a problem, right?
Preventive
So
maintenance.
it's yeah, so it's making sure that you're doing all of these things on the front end when you bring in new hires, that you're not creating inequities. Yeah, and it's an important thing to remember that all of the stuff you can Google about it talks about how it's equal pay for equal work. But that's not necessarily the case because experience and individual performance can come into play with that and really muddy the waters for sure. So if you've got a male and a female both doing the same job, both with, let's say, the same performance, but with varying experience, then they should not make the same, right?
That's right. Because
So,
if you have experience, especially if you're doing something, you're starting something up and that person's done it in their past and one hasn't, they're gonna have more value.
right,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it's a tricky thing, but pay transparency is a different thing altogether. We'll get to that. I'm sure that we're going to talk about that here soon.
All right, very good. All right, we need to put some practices in place so that we have pay equality so we don't end up with a pay equity problem. Did I get that right?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Okay, okay, fantastic. All right. So say we get in trouble, all right? We have pay inequity, IN in front of your equity inequity. What are the most common mistakes that we're making with our compensation plans? So what are the boo-boos you see all the time in your work?
Well, having run compensation at several companies throughout my career and both run it and just support it. And now as a consultant, I'm seeing a lot of variation in programs that need a lot of work and reasons that they got there. But really, no communication. Like that's a big mistake. And that lends to pay transparency as well. But you really have to communicate things. You have to communicate merit increases and communicate it well. You have to communicate bonuses, communicate them well. And that's something that I see that a lot of comp programs that I deal with on the back end as a consultant, that there's been some staleness because people haven't been as on top of the compensation program as they should be. Now, that also includes things like a lack of buy-in from the C-suite. So, I mean, if the C-suite's not bought into any of it, if they think that, well, we don't need to move the pay structure every year, it's fine the way it is. No, it's not. I worked somewhere, and the entire time I was there, we did not move the structure. And that was over about 6 years.
And hold on a second. When you say
Sure.
move the structure, what do you mean by that? Teach us
Well,
right there.
you have to age your structure every year. So all of your pay ranges are in your pay structure, right?
Mhm.
And it's from 50,000 to 100,000. This is one of your pay ranges. And you've got one job assigned to that pay range or pay grade. So this year, that might be an appropriate pay grade. Next year, that still might be an appropriate pay grade. But then the next year, you need to slide the ranges. You need to age them forward a little bit. I normally recommended a clip that is somewhat less than your merit budget. So if your merit budget's 3%, move your pay structure 1.5, 2%, because you don't want people just moving in the range without the range moving around them. That's kind of a tricky thing. And I answered this, you weren't there but at the Rock Hill meeting
I
when I
know I
spoke
had a
last
client
June.
and Jason's down there just laying out the wisdom and I didn't get to go.
It's okay. But I got some really good questions and some really good engagement from that group. But yeah, that's one of the things. Like if you just let your pay structure stay still, eventually you're going to have to reassign your jobs to new grades instead of letting your ranges grow with the market and with merit increases. So it's not topping people out. It's not slighting anyone by doing that. It's just maintaining that people are consistently moving within the range, but that the range is also moving at somewhat of a slower pace to make sure that they don't top out too soon. Because when they top out, you got to stop the merit increases. You start giving them a merit lump sum increase or bonus. And that's just never an ideal way to go.
Are you
Knowing
talking
that
about reclassifying somebody at some point?
I'm talking about reclassifying a job at some point because
Okay,
especially in
yeah.
IT jobs, they moved so quickly over the last 10 years that when I was in that company that was not moving its pay structure, I found myself doing more work around figuring out what new pay grade to move this job to because we had not moved the structure.
Ooh,
And that's not a great way to do it. But as long as you're moving the structure, and it doesn't need to be fancy. The pay structures that we create for people as part of our engagements are grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now,
nice.
some companies have some pay structures already in place that we are replacing or enhancing. We will honor their socialized pay grade labels if they want us to, because sometimes, oh, that job's a pay grade AD or whatever. So
Right.
they're used to that. It works for them. We try to keep that intact if we have to. But yeah, pay structure does not need to be fancy. Other things that I've noticed, like the incentive plans, like if a company has incentive plans that aren't really motivating, they're not really driving the right behaviors, then you're not going to get anything out of that. And it lends to people being unhappy. If there's not a meaningful opportunity there, I know somebody that works in retail, and she was an assistant manager, and she was up for like a $500 a month bonus opportunity if the store did
Nice.
well, which was fine for her. But for her associates that worked for her, the frontline associates, they were up for a $50 opportunity. Now, is that driving anything? Is that making them work any harder? I don't think so, right? I mean, even for a 16, 17, $18 an hour employee, $50 a month isn't moving the needle.
Right. And what if they find
So
out the manager's gonna get 500 and they're gonna get 50? Then we really have a problem.
yeah, well, that's not pay transparency. That is not, yeah, that is not where we want to take pay transparency. Pay transparency deals with the individuals. It's not broadcasting what everybody makes.
Right. But do they talk? Everybody shake your head. Yes, they all
Oh
talk.
yeah, it's protected speech for sure.
Yeah. All right. Very good. So compensation in terms of watch what you're incentivizing people to do and then move the pay structure
Mhm.
around the job description. Did I get that right? Help me.
Well, yeah, move your whole structure. So if your
Yeah.
structure,
Okay.
let's say your midpoint of 50,000 to 100,000 is 75,000. So if you move your structure 2%, that means that your new midpoint is going to be whatever 75,000. Let's see, 2% would be
Okay.
1,500.
Quick
So it'd be
math.
76.5. It'd be 76.5, right?
Hmm.
And if somebody was making 75,000 and you just gave them a 3% merit increase, then they're going to be making, oh man, either way, yes, you got to move your structure in conjunction with your merit increase planning or your cost of living adjustments, whatever you do, because not all companies do merit increases. So a lot are doing the cost of living adjustments, especially since COVID and inflation and everything. So we saw a lot of the merits turn into colas.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And I just want to throw this in here real quick. You got to do this employee performance management with your people so that you
Yeah.
can give really good merit increases, right? Like if you're not doing employee performance management, then it's hard to know, is Jason really doing better than Nicole or is it just my opinion? Right? So
Right.
I think it's absolutely huge. We should have a whole podcast about employee performance management. We should do that
Oh
too.
no, I want to do a whole podcast on job titles. That's my
Oh,
soapbox.
oh, well, maybe we'll have time to get you on your soapbox today. We'll see what
We
happens.
we might. Yeah, we might.
Okay, yeah, and I can tell because he got very serious. Very good. All right, let's look at what's happening out there in compensation. So, how has compensation strategy evolved in the last 5 years? If we go back, we're talking COVID, right? 2020.
Yeah.
And where do you think it's headed? So, first of all, start with what's been the things that are happening in the last 5 years?
Well, COVID presented a lot of challenges to companies
Yeah.
around compensation, especially with the great resignation that started mid to late 2021, because people could leave, they could do the same job somewhere else and make more money. And it's one of those things that I crow about when I'm doing my speaking engagements. Why are you waiting to give that person their raise? Why are you waiting to give them that promotion? What are you sitting on? Because they're going to leave if you don't. And then
Mhm.
the turnaround cost, the replacement cost for that normally runs about 1.5 times to maybe 2 or 3 times that employee's salary just to replace them if they voluntarily leave. So yeah, remote workforce, that's been a big challenge for compensation strategies. Like, do we need to pay people according to where they're sitting, or do we need to pay them as though they're sitting at our headquarters? Because just because I decide to move to, I don't know, San Francisco, because I'm in Columbia, South Carolina, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean that I need a $50,000. I mean, I would need one based on the cost of living, but it doesn't necessarily mean that my employer has to give me that money for me to make the conscious decision to move to San Francisco. Because I saw that a lot with people just moving because they could, because they were remote and they were just going to be remote for the rest of their career. So they'd rather live somewhere nice or fun or exciting, I guess. But that's been a big challenge for employers. Wages not keeping up with inflation was a big deal. There's a whole chart that I share in my speaking engagement that you missed.
Okay, I missed it already. When are you
Yeah.
speaking next? I'm coming. Send me your
I,
speaking calendar, will you please?
yeah, Charlotte, June the 18th in Charlotte.
Okay.
So yeah, wages not keeping up with inflation was a big deal. Now wages did move up. So as inflation went up, so did wages, but wages were not keeping up with inflation. Employers were not fast enough on their reactions, and you never want to get into reactive compensation. That's not a good place to be when you have to just react to people leaving, or if you have a lot of people leaving, a mass exodus. So yeah, wages not keeping up with inflation, big deal. Pay transparency is a big, huge, part of anybody's compensation strategy needs to be how transparent are we going to be with our compensation? Now it's an expectation of applicants and current employees to know what their range is. I'm sure that most
Exactly.
people, when they look at a job posting on LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Indeed, if they don't see the range, they're just going to pass it. And I tell people, I speak at a lot of local SHRM chapters in South Carolina, and I tell them all, if you're not doing it, start. You're limiting your candidate pool by
I
not posting
agree.
your ranges. And if you don't
100%.
have ranges, call me. We can help you with that.
That's right. And here's the other thing too. You post it, it's got the range on there. You interview this guy or gal, and they're fantastic. And then I always ask on the phone screen, what is your salary requirement? What do we need
Mhm.
to pay you for you to take this job? And then they're like, say the top of the range is 100,000, and they're like 175. And I'm like, sorry, the ad that you applied to said 100. That is not even a possibility. So it just kind of takes the ickiness, I'm going to call it, out of telling that person that's not what we're going to do. I'm sure you're
And
fantastically talented, but that's not what we're going to do because we have this
right.
thing called a budget. Going back
Well,
to
and
internal equity,
yeah,
trying to use all your
internal equity,
fancy
but
language.
also job title inflation is rampant. There's a big gray area between business titles, like what goes on your business card and what goes in the HRIS system. Because a lot of people ignore what's in the HRIS and they just go with whatever they put on their business card. And a lot of times some companies drive off of that business title more than they drive off of the actual coded job title that fits in their job architecture in their system. And so if you're posting a VP of finance with a range of 75 to $100,000, well, that ain't a VP of finance, right? So that's one of those tricky things. Like
No,
you were
that's an
talking about somebody,
accountant.
yeah, right. Yeah. And if you don't have a range posted with the VP of finance and they come in and they're like, well, I wanted $200,000 a year. And they're like, no, this is a $90,000 job. Well, then the company needs to change the title on the posting for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's some kinda weird thinking that people would be okay if they had a nice title. I mean, I don't know what
I'm,
that's about. It's a little dysfunctional, and it also discounts the VP role. I mean, that should be a
it does.
very important strategic role in the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think he's
Titles
on
are
his
free.
soapbox, everybody.
No, 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 no. I haven't gotten up yet. But yeah, somebody said a long time ago, hey, job titles are free. So if somebody wants a job title and I don't have to give them a raise and I can just call them a VP of whatever, then go for it.
Oh.
Not the best way to do it, but
No, that's lazy leadership, I think. And so that's why you need employee performance management, because if you are an accountant and you do want to be the VP of finance, there's a gap. And let's get you working on this gappy stuff. And then when we have the VP of finance available, boom, we'll go through our process, our hiring process. And if you get it, then boom, you get the title, you get the pay. I mean, that's really important, getting that gap
it
work
is.
done.
I could go on about it for an hour.
Okay, well, we'll
So,
have you back to talk about job titles. That's what we'll do. Okay, so where do you think compensation is headed? That's part 2 of that question. The trends, you talked about that, but like, where's it going? Where do you think comp's going?
well, that's a good question.
Right. Yeah, you're gonna have to be a
Well,
futurist here. Get out your crystal ball.
Well, I think one of the things that's evolved from all of this uncertainty since 2020 is really that employees now have the upper hand when it comes to negotiating their salaries. They're picking where they want to work, right?
Mhm.
And maybe that's not the case in 2025, but it was in 2021, 22, 23. Employees were really getting to pick where they wanted to be. They got to pick their manager, which is the most important thing, is to pick a good manager and hope that that manager doesn't get fired a month after you start. It's happened to me.
Ain't that the truth?
I thought I picked a good one. But anyway, a lot of companies are starting to look at it from a total rewards approach. So some companies are offering customizable benefits packages along with pay. You can choose to get lower pay, but we can give you better benefits, right? So there's
Mhm.
customizable packages out there. Not a lot of people are doing that, but I think a lot of people do like it. They like the ability to drive, like, you know what? I do okay. My wife makes really good money, but we really need better benefits, right? Or I need more PTO. So there are some packages out there that companies are starting to offer that give employees the flexibility to figure out what they want to make.
I think that's so smart because we all learned this in People 101 class or psychology class is that people are motivated by different things, and I think at different parts of your life, you need different things. So when I was young, I'll work all the time. Give me a lot of money because I'm trying to buy a car. I'm trying to get a down payment together. I'm trying to do these things in my 20s. But then now I'm 35 and I have 2 children. I need paid time off and benefits because these kids have ear infections or what, whatever the stuff
Right.
is. Yeah. But don't miss this, everybody listening. I think if you're gonna have these flexible packages, you're gonna have to get in Jason Smith's head and be very good at compensation because now we've got lots of moving parts, yes?
Yeah. And those would be really bigger companies that have their own compensation experts on staff
Yeah,
and their own benefits professionals on staff that are probably working together. Now, I've worked hand in hand right next door to benefits people throughout my career because
right.
benefits and compensation are so closely tied
Right.
together.
So some trends definitely around flexibility in benefits and compensation, things like that. Okay, I love it. All right. Let's talk about pay transparency legislation and how it's impacting organizations. So first of all, let's define it. What the heck is it? And then what's going on with all of our courts and our stuff and our government?
Well, it's at the state level right now. So there's upwards of 20 or so states that have pay transparency requirements. Some of them define it a little differently than others,
Uh,
where pay transparency could just be the requirement to post your ranges and to divulge any ranges to your employees, to your current employees, if they ask for it. But also, pay transparency in some states includes the part where you can't ask about their salary history. There's a salary history ban because sometimes there are people, when they're applying for a job or interviewing for a job, and you ask the question, "Well, what are you making now?"
mhm.
Don't ask that because there's some people that are in some disadvantaged situations already. And if you ask them what they make, let's say that it's an accountant, we'll just stick with accountant with a couple of years of experience, and they were working somewhere that they were really underpaid, but they didn't really know it. So they were making $40,000, but you were willing to pay, I don't know, $70,000 for an accountant. But now that you know that they were only making 40, you can be like, well, just give them 50. Let's do 50. That's good, right? That's 10,000 more than you were making today. So salary history bans are really going to be, I feel like that they should be part of all the pay transparency deals. California is the front runner when it comes to this type of legislation, and then other states follow suit. But pay transparency has actually been a good thing for the consulting industry for sure, because a lot of these companies, there's a lot of companies in pay transparency states that don't have a structure, and they need a structure, and they don't have the expertise to build a pay structure. So it has fortunately created opportunities for us. Yeah, that's how pay transparency is impacting it. And again, when I'm doing these talks to these local SHRM chapters, I'm telling them to go ahead and start posting your ranges. But you do have to check a few boxes before you just start willy-nilly sharing your ranges. You need to make sure that they're up to date, that they're accurate, that you are benchmarking your jobs to third-party salary surveys and that you've got good market data, and you need to feel really good about them, and not just going up and looking to see what other accountant postings on LinkedIn have as a pay range. That's just not great. That's not a great way to do it. Again, it's free, so you get what you pay for.
All right, that's twice. Are you writing this
Yeah.
stuff down, people? Very good. All right. So Jason is going to tell us in a little bit how do we get good data. He's going to work that into the conversation. So just hang in there. All right. So what advice do you have for human resource teams preparing for pay transparency laws? So let's say that my state doesn't
Well,
have this yet. How do I get myself prepped so that I could get ahead of the 8 ball?
well, first of all, act as though it's already here. So many employees and so many remote opportunities that are offered out there right now. Go ahead and just do it. But again, you need to be confident in your ranges and the ranges that you have assigned to your jobs, because it's going to do you a disservice if you post bad ranges out there. You're not going to get good applicants. If your ranges are too high, you might get applicants that are too good. And then you're like, oh, wait, we can't afford that. We didn't mean to post it that way. I tell everybody, again, to please try and pick one salary survey to participate in every year. You don't have to buy it, participate in it. Give them your data, give these trusted third party survey vendors your data, because it helps everybody in the long run. Gallagher does that. Gallagher has a national compensation survey, a general industry survey. We also have a ton of healthcare specific surveys, but then there's the Mercers and the Willis Towers Watsons out there as well. There's aggregators like Comp Analyst is a salary.com product. And that's why I said earlier, the free thing you get on salary.com, you know,
It's free.
it's,
And
it's
so you
free.
get what you pay for, people. Third time.
Right.
Don't miss it.
But their Comp Analyst system comes with this entire library of jobs. They have 10 to 15 people that spend their days matching the jobs in this job catalog to all of the surveys. Now, they can't say which surveys, they just say most of the surveys. So that's your more budget friendly option if you need market data, but really you need to be buying at least one source of data. And I know there's a lot of nonprofits that are really small, don't have the budgets for it, but do you have the budget to replace a lot of people at one time?
Lay it on us. If we were going to have this, is it like once a year we get the report and that's what we use for the year and then we do it again? So it's like it needs to be a line item in our human resource budget. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It needs to be a
Okay.
line item in your budget every year. And it's one of those things where you can, if you purchase it one year, maybe you can wait till the 2 years from then. So you can buy the 2025 and then the 2027. And then in 2026, you would just take the 2025 data and age it forward appropriately. So, I mean, there's a lot of labor market conditions out there, mainly around the employment cost index. And we have tracked that at about 3.3% is what Gallagher has predicted salary planning budgets would look like for 2025. They were up to 5.2% in 2022. And that was really your merit budgets. Yeah,
Right.
because people were reacting to all of the cost of living, the inflation, people leaving, the great resignation. So companies were really reacting quickly to all of that. But now 4% was the average merit budget last year. And now we're down to, we've projected about 3.3 to 3.5% for this year. So things are getting back to normal.
Mhm.
But then it begs the question, does a 3.5% merit budget really move the needle? Can you differentiate performance well with a budget that small?
I don't know if you can tell me or not, but is this $1,000 purchase? Is this a $10,000 purchase? Is it a $25,000 purchase to get my hands on a compensation survey that I can really use as good data? So if I'm the
Mhm.
HR manager or director and I walk into my CEO and I'm like, "Hey, we got to get a structure in place. We got to get our ranges in place. We got to have our act together,
Mhm.
so we can hire
Yeah.
good people and be safe and not have a problem with pay equity, right?
Right.
And so I need this piece of data. Plus, it's going to help you, C-suite people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And on the low end, really, you're looking at $5,000. Now, if
Okay.
you get like a little boutique survey, like one that's fairly regional to your area, you can normally get those for a lot less. I know I saw a construction survey out there the other day that one of my clients uses, and I think it's like $600.
Okay.
That's a very small piece of the pie. You're missing out on you're getting good construction data, But what about your corporate jobs? What about your IT jobs? What about your HR jobs? For those jobs, you really need to be looking at general industry surveys, which are a little bit more, and they can run from 5,000 up to 15,000 for one of the good ones.
Yeah, I just think it would pay for itself.
It would, but that's the other thing.
You're gonna make a $5,000 mistake or not, right?
Right. And then
Right.
there's other advantages to engaging with a consultant. We spend a ton of money on salary surveys every year, so we have a lot of them. So that's one of our plugs is that we buy it so you don't have to. So
There you go.
that's another option as well.
Very good. Very good. I love that.
Are you ready to build your vibrant culture? Bring Nicole Greer to speak to your leadership team, conference, or organization to help them with their strategies, systems, and smarts to increase clarity, accountability, energy, and results. Your organization will get lit from within. Email her at nicole@vibrantculture.com and be sure to check out Nicole's TEDx talk at vibrantculture.com.
Okay, let's talk about this too. How can human resource professionals talk about pay in a way that builds trust? And everybody pencils at the ready because we want to know how to do this. I mean, I think we decide to get into HR and we have a fear of the compensation conversation, the CC, right?
Mhm.
We have a fear of this thing. And most HR people are sweet and nice and kind and loving and care. And so telling
Yeah.
people bad news or something they don't wanna hear, it's not our favorite thing. So how can we do that?
Well, I mean, hopefully you don't have a lot of bad news to share when it comes to compensation
Mhm.
conversations, but ideally you would want to push those down to the managers to have those conversations, right? So HR's role is to train the trainer or to train the
Oh,
managers
love what you're
to
saying.
have the conversations, teach them how to be transparent, give them the data that they need in order to have these conversations. Compensation people are normally responsible for the job architecture of the company, which is building job ladders for people, career ladders, career opportunities, development opportunities
Mhm.
within jobs, like going from account executive one, two, three, four.
Right. Love it.
Uh, so either way, those are just some things to think about. Be able to communicate good development career ladders for everybody because that's what keeps a lot of people around. If they don't see a path in front of them, they're going to go where they do see a path. So that's kind of a big deal. But yeah, I don't recommend HR professionals having the conversation. I recommend them training the managers to have the conversation.
Oh, that's my favorite thing I've heard in this whole conversation. You don't have to do it. You just have to train the trainer. And here's the thing that I think is imperative is that you have a little university that's
Mhm.
interior to your organization. And one of those things is HR compliance. You need to be training all your managers on HR compliance. You need to understand the Disabilities Act and Fair Pay Act and da da da. Right. And then number two on compensation. And how do you
Mhm.
have the compensation conversation? The CC, as we're going to call it. All right. So we've gotten through kind of like what's going on, the equity, the transparency, all those things. But let's get tactical and practical now. So, how should an organization decide when it's time to conduct a compensation benchmarking study? Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. And we spoke about reactive compensation before. So a benchmarking study is normally what we do. The spike in voluntary turnover, like that could be one of the things that causes a need for a benchmarking study. Like, oh my goodness, we just lost 10 people and we've got 200 people. So we have to replace all those people, but we also need to make sure that the people we're bringing in are paid to market. So spikes in voluntary turnover, difficulty in attracting or recruiting people. If you're hitting walls when it comes to recruiting and attracting, that means you might need a case study. And then engagement survey results. Now, I would say the majority of engagement surveys have compensation as one of the biggest opportunities because nobody makes enough, right? Nobody makes enough.
No.
Yeah. So those are three reasons that stand out to me as reasons why clients came to me.
And I think too that a lot of times people are suffering inside their organizations. Like, we've had this job open for 6 months. And I'm like, why? Why has it been open 6 months? So you have to go through what are we doing to address this? And compensation is one of those things. We need to take a look at why this thing is sitting empty for 6 months. There's got to be
Absolutely.
something more than just it's hard to find these people, right? We need to understand who these people are, what they make, what they do, what should be on the quote unquote job description. So, don't suffer, get some help figuring out why you can't fill it. So the next one is, what tools or data sources do you recommend for setting salary ranges? Now we just talked about all those surveys. Are there other tools and data sources that we can get our hands on?
Yeah. So I mentioned Comp Analyst was a salary.com product, and I've used them throughout my career. And it's a great system for managing stuff. But all of these Comp Analyst, Comp Tool, Better Comp, Market Pay, Pay Factors, like these are all things that essentially do the same thing. Some do it better than others, for sure. And they all look different, of course, but
Mhm.
they give you a platform to upload your survey data that you purchase, upload your jobs information, upload your people information,
Hmm.
and be able to match your jobs to the survey jobs within that tool to build a composite for what that job is worth. And then once you do that and you have your people in there and what they make, then you can start doing some analysis in these things. So that's one of the first things that I would recommend. Now, you normally don't see a nonprofit with 100 employees with a need for this, right? They can pretty much keep up with 100 people in a spreadsheet. A lot of them will have the smaller, cheaper versions of HRIS systems that house all their employee data. I've always been at companies with at least 5,000 or more employees. So we've always had a need everywhere I've been to have one of these market pricing software tools. Again, the third party salary surveys. And it's important that these are third party salary surveys because you don't want employee reported data. These are surveys that survey the employers to give them their employee data. So it's
Wait,
cleaner.
repeat that. This is not a bunch of employees on Glassdoor saying how
No,
much they make.
no, no,
This is the
it's not.
HR director consciously participating in a survey in hopes that he or she will get accurate data back, right? It's a reciprocal
Right.
thing. All right.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing to point out.
Yeah, and it's important to participate because you get a huge discount as a participant with any survey that you purchase. Otherwise, they're really expensive. So
Well,
throw
and
that
that might be
five.
your next right step. If you're listening to this, figure out
Mhm.
which survey you need, like Google it up and then say, hey, how do I participate? That could be your next right step.
Yeah, and then as an even cheaper option, there's ERI, which is the Economic Research Institute. And I really need to call them and let them know that I'm plugging them all the time.
You do. You need a
But
little kickback. Wait, we didn't say that,
yeah,
did
well,
we?
I didn't say that. Um, But yeah, they're kind of the standard when it comes to cost of labor data. So that's a big thing for national companies that have multiple locations. They need to know what the cost of labor in Spokane, Washington is versus Columbia, South Carolina compared to the national average. So that is the standard for us. It's a very inexpensive tool, and it also has some survey data because it aggregates some surveys and BLS data in it by job. So if you need to go find out what a job makes or what a job should make or what the range of values for that job is, ERI is a good budget option for anybody like that person in HR for 100 people.
And
It's a great
tell
option.
us what the letters stand for again.
Economic Research Institute. Yeah, that's a good one. And I don't get any kickbacks from that.
No, we're just having fun. People relax. Okay. All right. So here's our next tactical and practical question. How do you structure compensation conversations with employees who are underpaid based on market data? Oh,
Okay.
we want to know the answer to
Well,
this one. Please help us.
whose market data is it? You know, or as my friends in Australia say, whose market data is it? Um,
Oh, we were having a whole conversation about the Australians. If you're Australian, leave us a love note. We love you guys.
we do.
We don't want you to
Um,
stuff up your compensation. Go ahead.
right. I remember a time when I was at the hospital system and the leader for the physical therapy group came to me and said, hey, my folks just came to me and they brought this publication that was like, I don't know, physical therapists today or whatever it was, it's some association. Well, that publication had some market data
Okay,
in it.
that was in air quotes for you listeners.
Oh, right. Yeah, I got to keep remembering. So yeah, it was one of these things where they came in and said, "Hey, this thing says that we should be making $90,000." Now, granted, this was back in probably 2009 or 2010, right after the recession and everything, and companies weren't giving increases as freely as they used to. But they came to them, and really, again, it's an employee reported survey finding in this publication that they brought to them. So they asked me to get in front of these physical therapists and explain
Oh,
to them
fun.
why that data was meaningless or why we couldn't use that. Because when I'm looking at what employers reported, I'm coming up with 75,000 for an entry level physical therapist. Granted, this is a long time ago. They're making a lot more money now. So yeah, just because an employee comes to you and says, "Hey, look at this thing I got on salary.com. I'm way underpaid. What's going on? Give me a raise." That's the explanation you need to give them. Now, a lot of companies may be that far behind, right? So I don't know if you can structure those conversations because they just happen. They just show up and knock on your door, or they just randomly call you on Teams without the little preface thing. "Hey, do you have a minute?"
Yeah, if you're
So
gonna ask for a raise, you should be kind. Write that down. Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
easygoing with your HR guy or gal. They're trying as hard as they can. That's what I think.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I don't know what you think about this, but I really encourage HR people when I am talking to them, I'm doing my talks. If somebody says, "I'd like to make more money," say this, "Wonderful. We would like you to earn more money." I mean, because that is the truth. I think for most organizations, you don't need to be scared of that conversation or say, "Oh, we're not doing raises." Like keep it positive out of the gate.
Mhm.
Because really, again, back to employee performance management, if we can get you to learn these things, then there'll be an opportunity for you to make more money. Right. And then is this true too, Jason? We can say, let me do my research, exactly what we're talking about. And let me get back to you and I'll get some data points and we'll pour over it and take a look at it and see where we're at. What do you think about that?
That's a good way to approach it. I have tried throughout my career to not necessarily divulge how I got to some numbers, right? That's the thing that creates more questions. "Oh, well, you matched it to this thing. I don't think that's what I do." It creates more questions than it answers. So be careful in how transparent you are when you're sharing how you got to the numbers that you got to. Now, you can say, "I did the research. It's still this pay grade. And based on your experience, this is where you fall in the pay grade. And we feel good about it. And we have to worry about 5,000 other employees being in the right position in their range. And we feel pretty good about that as well." And again, it all depends on if it's a very strong performer or if it's a mid-level performer. Maybe if it's a flight risk, maybe you do need to do something about it, right? A flight risk from a strong employee. But yeah, always try not to divulge too much of the detail because it just creates more questions.
I love that. I love that. Okay. And then the other thing that just popped in my little brain over here, Jason, is this idea of competencies.
Mhm.
Most organizations I work with, they don't have a solid set of competencies for a position where the competency has been laid out into 4 levels or something like that, and it
Right.
takes a ton of work to get that structure in place. Like, we're talking about salary ranges right now, but then within the salary range, there's this thing of competencies and how good you are at those particular competencies, and then thrown in experience. It's a little messy. But how important is it, or how do I go about getting started maybe? This is a bonus question. I'm throwing
Yeah.
Jason into the wild blue yonder here. Is that an important thing to do to start figuring out the competencies inside each of the roles that I have, the jobs?
I've been at one place where we did get into the competency conversation
Yeah,
and we put it in the job descriptions. Every job
right.
description had a list of core competencies that each job was expected to be, I guess. It's one of those things where it might be getting a little too fancy depending on the size of your organization.
Right.
Like a Google has the capacity and a gaggle of compensation people to work on that,
That's more than
right?
one.
Yeah. Yeah. That is more than one. So, yeah. And it's fine for them if they have the capacity and the bandwidth. But again, the HR leader for 100 employees doesn't have that kind of capability at all. I mean, it's nothing against them. It's just, it takes time.
Right. Gotta get payroll done and talk to somebody who's unhappy and talk to the VP who's trying to hire somebody. Yeah, there's a lot of things
Yeah.
on our list.
Yeah. And so competencies can drive performance for sure. Like you can make that a part of their performance evaluation if you need to. And then again, I guess it would tie into pay if their rating determines what their increase is going to be. I haven't seen that in action a lot.
Yeah, I think we talk about it in HR circles. It's in our
Yeah.
HR certifications. We talk about
Mhm.
competencies all the time. Like you said, maybe the Googles and the Bank of Americas and the Citibanks and the whoever's have that stuff dialed in. I often tell people if you're going to work on competencies with pay, pick the most important, like frontline customer service person. Like, what do they have to be able to do before you can pay them a little bit more? Because those are the jobs that you need to kind of pump those people up so you can get them into leadership someday. So start with one and try to figure out what's going on there. It's the structure that Jason's been talking about in this whole thing.
Yeah. And we mentioned, and I'll give them a plug just because I worked with it firsthand, is when we worked with Quint Studer, the Studer group at the hospital system I was at,
Mm.
it really did bring to the forefront how important these competencies are. Accountability being one big one for sure for everybody.
Oh, yeah, you talked about how that was an accountability culture because we're trying to
Yeah.
build a vibrant culture here. Will you tell that same thing that we talked about offline?
Yeah. I mean, I was becoming a leader at the point
Yeah.
when we were doing it. Like they had already been through the transformation, but everybody had to go through the training. But I think it's important with performance evaluations to not let it be a once a year thing. You don't want to surprise anybody and say, hey, man, you're not cutting the mustard. They just found out after a year that they're not cutting the mustard, like you didn't tell them before.
Right, and now they're
So,
not getting the raise. See how all this
right.
works
So,
together?
not getting a raise should not be a surprise, and getting fired should not be a surprise. One of the things they pushed really hard on was monthly rounding with all of your employees.
Mm.
So every frontline leader who had people directly reporting to them had to spend 10 minutes every month with every employee. Now, that was harder for some people to do,
I
and they
love
could
it.
delegate. Yeah. But it was important to make sure that everybody was on the same page year round. So they would ask 5 questions every month. I can't remember what they were, but one of them was like, what's working well? What's not working well? Is there anybody you'd like to recognize for appreciation or anything like that? And then there were 2 others. But yeah, it was a really good environment and it really was hardwired into the organization, especially with the accountability. The thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes became a
That's what you had told
requirement.
me. Oh,
Yeah.
talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Handwritten thank you notes became a requirement. Every leader in that organization. Now, there were probably about 12,000 employees in the organization at the time, and probably about 1,000 people in leadership roles. But they had a quota every month of 3 thank you notes that they had to write to whoever they felt they needed to thank. And I still kept all mine. Like I've got mine
Oh, yeah, they're
still.
little
But
treasures.
yeah, they really are. So yeah, it's accountability, being appreciative, being grateful constantly, and being on the same page year round, like letting people know where they are constantly.
I love it. I love it. Okay. All right. So let's jump back into our compensation. We went down a little bunny trail
Yeah.
on competencies. It's all my fault. But please get out your pens and paper and write a thank you note today to somebody who is doing a good job for you. It's probably not maybe the same as getting a raise, but it sure will feel good to them if they get the note. All right. So, how should compensation strategies differ for executives versus frontline employees? Because we've all heard stories out there all the time about how the CEO is just getting this ridiculous bonus and all these things. So, what are your thoughts?
So really for executives versus frontline employees, it's going to be a long-term look for executives because retention is key at that level. Like you want to maintain stability at the top of your organization. So
Makes
C-suites,
sense.
VPs, even directors and senior directors in some organizations, they put them on a long-term incentive plan, which measures their performance or the company's performance, whatever the metrics are that they decide to go with over a span of 3 years. Some will pay at the year marks, they'll pay a portion of it, or some will do think it's cliff vesting. Now, I'm not an executive comp expert, but some will pay at the end of the 3 years, and you've got to stay the whole 3 years to get a piece of that or to get the whole thing. So that really drives retention at the top because that's really important. For frontline employees, it's more nearsighted, it's shorter term. So frontline employees, even you're not exempt, you're exempt, they're up for bonuses at a lot of organizations that pay annually, right? They pay annually based on the performance of the company, maybe a mix of their individual performance at the same time. And if we're talking about compensation strategies, so that's one piece of the strategy is how frequent the payout is. The other one is where are you going to look for these people? For executives, you're going to look nationally, right? You want to look all over the country for somebody that can come run your
Right. Or even
organization.
the world, right?
Right. If you're a company in Columbia, South Carolina, you're not going to just cast the net over Columbia, South Carolina to find an
No, no,
executive.
no.
for sure. Sometimes the smaller employers will do a regional look, like they don't necessarily need to find somebody from San Francisco to come work in Columbia, South Carolina, which might be a hard thing to sell anyway. But and then your frontline employees are going to be more localized, right? So for bank tellers, you're going to be looking in Columbia for bank tellers. Same for accountants. Well, and as you go up, I mean, you may do a regional look for accountants. If you have an accountant job that is a remote job, you may cast that net nationally. But for the most part, you're casting a wide net for executives, you're casting a small net for lower frontline jobs. And then for executives, you're really looking at other similar sized companies. So say like, I don't know, chain of restaurants. Yeah. So let's say there's a Denny's that's just in South Carolina. That's the whole company is just in South Carolina. And they're looking for a CEO and it's small. Let's say they do $50 million in revenue every year. Well, you need to go looking for people at other companies with similar sized revenues. You're not going to be getting anybody from Walmart coming to apply for this job. You're not going to be getting anybody from Darden or Brinker International, some of the bigger corporate restaurant chain companies, and in healthcare too. You know, a little individual hospital in Columbia doesn't need to be searching for a new CEO at a huge hospital system like Ascension Health, right? That's a billion dollar company. They're not going to come. So yeah, so it's revenue specific, size specific, the number of employees are specific. But for frontline employees, the size of the company they're coming from doesn't matter.
Right. Absolutely. Fantastic. And here's another thing that's like all the rage out there is AI, artificial intelligence, and data analytics. So how do you see this playing a part in compensation?
Well, I'll be honest, it's created a little anxiety amongst compensation consultants. Well, yeah, because AI can do a lot of cool things. But again, you know, Chat GPT is free. I won't say it again.
Don't miss that.
Right. But I honestly don't think that AI is ever going to replace the need for human interaction
I
or
agree.
intervention with compensation planning. It was like the top topic at the World at Work conference last year. Like every other session was about AI.
Oh,
And World at Work is the Total Rewards Association. It's comp and benefits professionals from all over the world. They have about 2,500 people at their conference. But yeah, it was a big thing last year. A lot of people were sweating about it, you know, but I don't think it's ever going to be a replacement. There's
right.
just too much subjectivity that you can't program into AI that needs to be done to do what we do.
I would agree. I got asked that the other day about my training. Like, Nicole, do you think that AI could replace you? And I'm like, no. Never. AI needs a prompt, first of all, and you need somebody who can interact, be quick, be on the
Mhm.
ball, right? And somebody with a sense of humor and somebody with empathy because humans are sentient beings. We've got to have the feels. And here's the thing, we talk about hiring and about it being fair and equitable and all of those things. You do have to use your humanity for interviewing, talking to people, assessing. All that is human activity. So AI is a great partner, but not a replacement. That's how I feel about it. All right. So, what role does compensation play? Okay, this is happening left and right in mergers, acquisitions, and organizational restructuring. Holy mackerel. If you're going through that stuff, first of all, let's have a moment of silence. Okay, keep going, Jason.
Especially if you are the acquired and not the acquirer.
And you're the
That's
HR guy
always
or gal. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
so compensation plays a pretty big role. And again, if a company's merging and or acquiring other companies, then they probably have their own compensation people on staff. But we play a pretty big role when it comes to making everybody at the company that you're acquiring look like your people from a job title perspective. Because I mean, I had a client last year, they do a lot of acquisitions and they acquired this little mom and pop that does work similar to what they do, but they acquired them and it was probably about 30 people in the shop. And I think everybody was a VP.
Oh, yeah. Uh-oh. Now we have a mess.
They
Mess,
weren't.
mess, mess.
Yeah. Right. So then you have to fit everybody in because there's already people at the acquiring company that do the jobs that these people that you just acquired do. So when they come on and you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm not a VP of business development anymore. I'm an account executive now. Yeah, you are. That's what it is. Again, if you feel the need to put stuff on your business card or give your employees the freedom to put whatever they want on their business card, that's on you. But yeah, we play a pretty big role in that. I remember when I was at the hospital system and we acquired a small community hospital from my hometown. I had to go in there and work with all the leaders to show them, here's our job titles. We need to work together to put your people in our job titles. And we also ended up having to pay about $5 million to get all those people up to market in that small town hospital because they had failed to stay on top of it. But it was a small town. The closest big city was Columbia, about an hour away. So for years, there were people that had been there working and didn't realize that the market had moved around them and that they could be making way more money somewhere else until somewhere else acquired them and said, hey, you need to be making more money. So yeah, we play a pretty big role in any mergers and acquisitions. It's really messy around executives, when you're acquiring executives from another company. But yeah, we do play a pretty big role in that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. All right. So, bottom line on that is you need some help. And maybe you're thinking, he's a consultant. Sometimes you need somebody who has the expertise that you don't. That's what I know. I mean, in my own business, my own career, I've always gone to other people. I'm like, you already do this. Teach me, tell me. That's how I started out. I'm like, Jason, teach us. That's what it's all about. All right. Well, we are definitely at the top of our hour. And I know that people are like, wait, I want to know more. I have more compensation questions, but we've got to bring it to a close. So I've got 3 little goodies. First thing is, Jason, what's one compensation myth that you'd love to bust? You're just like, this is just silliness.
I might get some flack for this, but
Uh-oh.
merit increases are not going to get anybody where they need to be over time. And it's almost as if staying with the same company for years and years and years, like our parents did,
Yeah.
because it used to pay off. A lot of them had pensions
Right.
and
They got a
defined
big,
benefit.
big fat check and a watch.
Right, right, right. And they got to ride the stock market, even though the stock market had a couple of dips in the 80s and 90s. It all just kind of came back. But yeah, I think merit increases, honestly, with companies budgeting 3.5%, even 4%. I just don't think it's a good way for companies to manage people's pay over time. I think you need to do a market adjustment process somewhere in there where you're getting people to the appropriate place in their range based on their experience. So you can keep doing merit increases, that's fine, but people are not going to stay long term saying, well, I'm going to get a 3% merit increase every year. So I'm going to stay here for 20 years.
No.
There's too much pay transparency. People know how much they could make at other places right now. My myth is just that a lot of people lean on those merit increases and they're so proud of those budgets, but it's not moving the needle for anybody.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Do you want excellent people who really want to work and do it? And if they are that mental model, then they
Mhm.
know what's going on in their industry. They know what people are getting paid. I mean, if somebody's an eagle at their work, they're an eagle at this other stuff, the research and all the things that they should be doing. So smart, they're
Right.
just smart everywhere. Don't miss that. All right. So what's the best advice you've ever been given? So we're going to flip the table. What market compensation guru gave you a piece of advice that you think is so good?
You get what you pay for.
Oh,
That's it. I know I already said it 3 times, but you get what you pay for. And that was something from my dad, actually, that I heard. So a long time ago, and it makes so much sense. You don't pay enough, you're going to have people leaving. And if you do pay well, then you're going to have people staying and you're going to have people bought in and you're going to have people that stay for a long time. So,
yeah. And those are the people that help you scale.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's what you really want to do. That's another 1 hour podcast. How to scale your business
Mhm.
is have great people. That's absolutely huge. All right. And then finally, here's our last question. If human resource professionals take away one thing from this conversation, what would it be? Bottom line, this whole thing for us.
Don't try to do it all yourself.
Mm.
Ask for help. That's it. I've run into a lot of people before who think they know everything and then they get overwhelmed when they get into it and realize they don't. And that's okay. But it's also okay to ask for help.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah, we can't do this life alone. It's this thing called teamwork. It makes the dream work. All right. So if you want to get a hold of Jason Smith, where can we find you? You're on the LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, I'm on the LinkedIn. Yeah, but my username is Compin Jason. Yeah.
It's Compa Jason. And then, of course, where can we find you in terms of where you're at? You're at Gallagher. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm at Gallagher. I've been here for a year and a half now. Again, I'm based in Columbia, South Carolina, but my practice is based in Richmond, Virginia. And all of our consultants are remote for the most part. But yeah, this is the best move I ever made. I've really enjoyed the consulting side of things now. One of the reasons I chose consulting, or consulting chose me, was that I spent years telling people what to do, how to do things, how to maintain pay equality and pay equity throughout my career. And I guess I just cared too much because not everybody, but a lot of times it wouldn't happen. People wouldn't listen to the advice that I was giving them. And that was frustrating for sure. But, now that I'm in consulting, I get to tell people how they should do things. And if they do it, then that's great. And if they don't, I won't know about it. That's
One arm removed. That's absolutely right. Yeah. And here's the thing. If you worked at the Applebee's in the way back, you're passionate about customer service, passionate about getting it right, and just in general, probably a passionate, fun-loving, knows how to make a great margarita kind of guy. That's the deal.
Bahama Mama. I made a good Bahama Mama.
Oh, okay. Very good. All right. Well, if nothing else, look up Jason. He'll make you a cocktail in Columbia, South Carolina. All right, everybody. That's been another great episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. Go down right now, if you would, and click like and leave Jason a love note. Tell him that you're grateful for his time and his energy. And just know, Jason, that I'm grateful for your time and energy. Come back next week on Wednesday. We'll never have another episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. Thanks so much for being on the show, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more like-minded listeners. Remember, the journey to building a vibrant culture never stops. Stay inspired, keep nurturing your vibrant culture, and we can't wait to reconnect with you on the next exciting episode of Build a Vibrant Culture podcast.